Perfect. I'm here with Robert Taylor and Anita Taylor as well, who I understand has very valuable insight. And just going to chat a little bit about the history of family medicine and perspectives on the dreams of the founders. So we were just talking a bit about the Millis Report. You don't need to speak to the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Millis Report came out in 1966, and it was a response to the fragmentation of medicine at that time, and there were fewer and fewer general practitioners. And if you had a headache, a stomach ache, and a backache, you had to see 3 doctors. And so they formed the Citizens Commission on Graduate Medical Education, and John Millis headed that commission. And their final report came out saying that, yes, medicine in America is fragmented, we do not have enough generalists, and what we need is a primary physician, not a primary care, but a primary physician to pull it back together again. There were then a couple of other reports that came out, and one actually used the term, a family physician. And based on this, the general practitioners in the country and the American Academy of General Practice came together and formed family medicine with a certifying board. Was approved in 1969. We became the 20th medical specialty.
And at that time, so you were part of a part of this, or did you come along a little afterwards?
I came on a little bit later. At this time, in 1969, I was busy in my practice in New Paltz, New York, seeing 40 patients a day in rural practice, and I wasn't involved in this. I came on a little bit later.
Okay. And so this, in 1969, there was at least a timestamp of this is a new specialty. I expect that there's probably some period before that specialty was defined, or before it became at least encapsulated an idea that people recognized. How did that movement shift over the first few years of the specialty in your perspective?
Well, there was an abortive attempt before 1969 that did not succeed, but in 19
Take your time. And certainly, if Anita wants to join us, I
got you.
I was told she may have more useful information than you.
So in 1969, the timestamp was the formation of the American Board of Family Practice, headed by Nick Pizzicato. And we set out 4 unifying characteristics of this new specialty. It was really very revolutionary. There was going to be a 3-year family practice residency program. There had previously been some 2-year general practice programs, and 15 of those were metamorphosized into family medicine, 3-year family medicine programs. There was mandatory CME, there was mandatory recertification, and one other thing that will come to me later.
Okay.
And so those characterized the new specialty. The mandatory CME and the mandatory recertification with the board were groundbreaking. Nobody else had them. By now, in 2016, by the 21st century, virtually every specialty has it, although some of them grandfather you once and forever. Family medicine, there was mandatory recertification, and nobody was doing
From the
that.
start.
From the start, yeah.
And you started to say that there was a bit of an effort or blockade against the specialty. You said early on.
Nobody felt we wanted it. The sense early on was that every patient a family physician saw was taking away a patient from somebody else. No, we were not welcome into most of the hospitals and the medical schools. We got there because state legislatures and the federal government mandated that we go there. We were not always welcome.
Interesting.
The early training was often reluctant, and the idea was, well, we'll train you guys, but we really don't want you to stay around here. And then when some of us stayed in the cities, It was, no, you're supposed to go out into the rural area. You aren't supposed to stay here and compete with us. But the big breakthrough came, I think, when, family medicine moved into the medical schools. We started doing it perhaps backward, because the initial focus was to train residents. But we hadn't prepared medical students to be those residents. But this was the residency was the area of opportunity, because there were these original 15 GP residencies that could be converted so we could have instantly some residency training. So that's where we began with residencies. The medical school, which I think was the important part of it, came later. Now maybe I'm biased because I've spent most of my career in medical schools with medical students. But the big challenge came later, getting into the medical schools. And again, so often this came because state legislators would appropriate money and say, you are going to have a department. They would then, now how do you do this? Well, they would go to some politically connected general practitioner in the community somewhere, maybe in rural practice in the state, and say, okay, we have this new department, and you're the professor in the medical school. And they would put him in meetings and in competition for resources with entrenched professors and nationally known professors of surgery, medicine, and psychiatry, and some survived and some didn't.
Interesting. So it's interesting you point that, and I'm thinking back to your idea of the warrior chairs. The ones that were able to take over a department and strive. And I think it's fascinating because I've often seen the perspective of family docs as being the guys that sit in the back of the boardroom. They sit on the sidelines. They're not used to being at the table. They're happier seeing patients in the clinic, and when it comes to administrative or boardroom stuff, they'll sit on the sidelines. And so it sounds like that was from the start, in terms of these appointments, that culture and that attitude was almost forced upon.
It was.
In a way.
Family physicians are traditionally nice guys and girls. This was not what was going to succeed. You had, at some point, these early guys had to stop being nice. And a number of them, I'm looking through here, are reflected here. These were the guys at Eastern Virginia Medical School. They're gone. Gerald Geringer. Tom Wolfe is still alive.
So Tom Wolfe, I'm talking to him in 2 or 3 weeks here.
He's alive.
He was young.
He was a young guy at that time.
The youngest chair in the country when he was a chair.
Yeah, Tennyson Williams at Ohio State.
I
think he's gone. Harry Mayhew was at Ohio State. But in putting this book together, I went to the visible political leaders.
Most of the early chairs are gone.
Like I said, in doing this book, some of them were not good authors, and some were not good.
Off the record, of course.
Off the record, of course. Some of them were not time. We're not good timely. We had one very strong, powerful warrior chair, and he said he would write a chapter, and 4 months after the manuscript was due, I called him, and I said, I don't have your manuscript. And his answer was, you weren't serious about a deadline, were you? But his name's not in the book.
So I can try to read between the lines a little bit.
Yeah.
Wow, so then you have 66 with the Mills report, which, was that a report through the AMA, or was that through ACGME or GME, or if you recall?
I'd have to look.
Okay.
I think it was...
Carnegie Commission, wasn't it? Carnegie.
Might have been.
I saw the citation in here.
There was something about Carnegie. It was a foundation that funded this study.
Which Carnegie did the...
Citizens Commission.
Or maybe it was...
Carnegie did the report, what's it called, back in 1910 for...
the Flexner.
Flexner, of course, yeah.
Right.
That was a Flexner.
I thought...
Well, here it is. And I'd have to go... I think it was an AMA, and it may be some joint appointment.
I don't think it was AMA, because he's not a physician.
Google the Mills Commission.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
it'll come right up.
Tell me everything.
Yeah.
So the sentiment then, so you go 66, and in 69 you have the specialty created. As you can recall in speaking with folks in the years after this or during that time, what was the sense on the kind of the dreams or the hopes of people right in that period, right at the outset. You know, when the specialty was created, there may be some pushback and things, or the dreams that folks had for it.
Well, I think the main dream is that we would survive. And that young people going into family medicine would be glad 2 decades later they'd done it. I think we dreamed we would have, respect on a par with other specialists. I think we dreamed that everybody in America, every American citizen would have access to a family physician.
Yeah. Remember, it was a revolution. Remember the times. This was the 60s. This was the time of protests. You know, we were at the AMA meetings when there were student protests about AMA owning tobacco stock in New York City.
Yeah.
They marched down the aisle of the AMA General Assembly meeting and protesting that AMA was part of the problem, So it was really a protest from the younger members and the older members, because basically it was saying you're not paying attention to the need in this country for a unified healthcare system, and we can provide that.
And so that was kind of the attitude of America, and you think that kind of just
No,
permeated
the
the medical profession? No, I guess what I mean is
Yeah.
the attitude of America was one of protest, of the counterculture.
Yeah.
And you think that kind of just permeated the medical field as well?
Yes. It was a distrust of authority, and authority was the limited, what we now call the limited specialist.
Yeah. We're back to the future, We're doing the same thing now with Bernie Sanders, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah, a lot had to do with the Vietnam War, civil rights movement,
Yeah. Women's rights.
and women's rights.
Yeah.
And family medicine
Got
really rode right along on that. We were absolutely a protest movement. It was a people's movement to take medicine back.
Wow.
Yeah. It was exciting.
I'm getting goosebumps. I mean, I'm honestly
exciting.
getting goosebumps hearing
It
you
was
guys
really
talk.
exciting.
I really am. Like,
Yeah, and we were, the fact, Bob, of the certification, I think this was key, that, you took the exam because you could see the future, that this was something that was going to be needed. But you had colleagues that you had to convince to take it, remember?
There was one individual we happened to meet for the first time in a vacation setting. And it turned out he was a family doctor. He was about my age.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to take that exam. I said, you got to. This is a ticket you're going to need.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
wow.
And he went on to become a department chair.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
the moral story is I should listen to anything you say then, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do it all.
No, but at least listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting to realize that there was this whole generation coming up that got swept up into it, medical student generation. And that's what propelled it. Because
Wow.
when you think of the fact that there were, 12 residencies that opened initially.
I thought it was 15.
Was it 15? Okay, well, whatever. It was a small number. But then, within the first few years, it grew dramatically. Now, that had to be a young person's push. Now, they were desperate to have faculty and desperate to have, departments, but it was the fact that there was a huge demand for some change. Yeah.
It's interesting, and you've already commented about how family docs are traditionally the nice guys, and it's very, very interesting to hear that this was grew out of a sentiment of protest. That we're going to fight against something, we're going to be counterculture.
But it was a positive program. It was to make it better.
So it was the nice guys that were trying to change to take overthrow authority, or to maybe go past authority to change what they saw as being detrimental, I guess. I would say it's interesting that in my generation, I haven't heard that counterculture comment.
No, it's gone.
Not a.
The only thing you're hearing is that people like Richard Bruno.
Oh, I love that you tossed out Richard's name. I love Richard. He shows up all over the place.
He was our mentee.
I
He is our
love
mentee.
Richard.
Richard, I interviewed him for medical school.
Did you really?
Yes. And Bob was his mentor at graduation.
I love when the world's a
I mean,
small place.
We have, and Richard has been, I'm the one who pushed him to become active. Well, I didn't have to push very hard, but, yeah, but, to run for the board and all.
Yeah.
I mean, this was huge, and Richard has been part of our lives.
Wow.
Coming from Oregon,
I've known Richard for about 7 years now,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And he and I have gone back and forth. We'll send each other notes from time to time.
Yeah,
I was
okay,
his
well-
parliamentarian this past year.
Okay.
He and I
Yeah.
he'll send me pictures of family and things like that.
Right,
So,
right.
but you're right. He
Yeah.
probably is the counterculture.
Oh, I mean, he is. This is it. And you know
Yeah,
what
he
was
could
happening?
articulate it.
Do you know what was
But
happening
the-
in the 70s? Richard Nixon was trying to get single payer.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
Yes.
That was the atmosphere. And, we don't remember that. We hear Clinton and the health and single payer. But it was Nixon.
That's right.
And you wrote articles, Bob, from a practicing point of view.
I didn't like that at all. I wrote an article once called 1976, the year we lost our independence.
Wow.
About that time.
Wow.
Yeah, we
That's
have all
bold.
those- we have all these articles. It's
Oh, that's
amazing.
bold.
We have all of them. We saved
I
every
don't
one
know
of
if that
them.
would ever come up if you Google it, but
There's about 60 articles you wrote about practice in medicine and all that. Yeah.
I read that. We read that recently.
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
filing
we've
them
gone through
away.
files, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
bit by
have.
bit, they
Yeah,
chipped away till we were
Wow.
not independent.
yeah.
We were all working for groups like Kaiser on salary, with administrators telling us we had to have 10-minute visits.
And that was back. in
Luckily,
the
that never happened, did it?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, because then there's the other crossover is going from a time period when we used to say, what you're saying is, well, if you have a backache, a stomach ache, and a headache, you should see 3 different doctors. That trend is kind of coming back around again,
Tell me about
unfortunately.
it. Tell me
That's-
about it.
Right?
That's exactly.
My concierge doctor, he knows his medicines and he knows his, God, he knows his tests. But he really functions like a concierge in a hotel.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, last summer I injured my hand. I did that, and I tore the sagittal band and dislocated that tendon down into there. I'd never seen it in 50 years. So I called him up, and he had me an appointment the next morning at 9 o'clock with a hand surgeon. You think
Wow.
about it. You think about that. You can't do that.
No.
No, see you in September.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
And
That's what.
that's what he can do.
That-
Yeah.
We want to go see.
That's a good way to put it.
She called the gastroenterologist. My gastroenterologist's office
Yeah.
was turned away, even though I'm a patient.
They said,
So
"We're not taking
we go to our
any
concierge doctor. He's got an appointment in a week.
Wow.
So that's the power.
That's-
of
It's
that.
getting you in.
That's it.
That's what I pay him
But
for.
that's the gateway.
Wow.
But isn't that interesting?
But
Yeah.
we're back to being
Which is
the
back to, exactly.
gatekeeper to keep you out or keep you in. Gate opener. He's a gate opener.
Interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
Which is also, again, going back on that trend of patients saying, I came to see you, you're not going to do blood work? What do you think? I have, patients that I'll walk in the room and they'll say, I have knee pain, I need a referral to an orthopedic doctor. I'm like, well, I can take a stab.
Right,
You're like,
right.
you're here, why don't I have anxiety? Well, no, I just need the referral. Like,
That's what they're
that's
expecting.
really what it is.
Yeah.
And like, well,
Yeah.
let's spend some time. We can spend some time here and try to work with this.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting because that perspective, these are trends that I'm starting to see every day in practice. The same
And
that
this
same
is
issue come back in.
back to what it was in the late 60s. And that's
It's
when family
fragmented.
medicine
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
We've got, we're relatively healthy, but I am 80 years old, and you do collect stuff in your problem list. I think between us, we've got 8 or 10 different
Yeah.
specialists that we see.
Awful. It's just
You know?
awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read somewhere recently that said the average Medicare patient sees 13 different physicians a
This is
year.
Anita Taylor.
They'll see 13 different faces in the course of a year.
Yes.
Well, faces, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, physicians. But
Yeah,
if you need to get a phone call, by all means, don't. There's certainly.
I'm retired.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I was calculating. I'm like, how many years do I need to save up to come live at a place like this and call it a day? So I think this history is very interesting. So you went from 69, and you have the protest and kind of this counterculture, and I'm seeing a lot of the themes that you're describing that are really similar to my trajectory. And I've articulated a couple of those so far, but one of the things I have to share with you also is, as a medical student, the same thing you said is the same comment I still hear, which is, are you sure you're going to be happy with this in 20 years? If you choose family medicine, is that really something that 20 years from now you'll be happy with? You know, and I hear a lot of physician leaders who are family doctors who are saying, I want to do what I can to make sure that this specialty is still relevant and meaningful 20 years from now. Which, in my interactions in the AMA, I don't hear any cardiologists saying, "Are you sure you're gonna be happy being a cardiologist 20? I need to work to make this make this special in 20. Radiologists
It's a
are
crusade,
saying,
yeah.
it's wild.
Yeah.
Crusade's probably a good word to put it.
Now, the interesting thing is in counseling medical students about specialty choice, which both of us have done over the years, you may just be happier in family medicine 20 years from now than you are as a gastroenterologist after you've passed 10,000 scopes.
Yeah.
Or something where you see the same thing over and over. In family medicine, there's never a day goes by that you don't see some combination of things that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And if 20 years from now you get tired of seeing, you're now 20 patients a day, you can always go off and be a school doctor, you can be a cruise doctor, you can go into administrative medicine. You have broad-based medical skills. You can do lots of things.
Yeah.
But the gastroenterologist who's done nothing but pass scopes, they don't have those broad-based skills.
Yeah. No, I think in talking to medical students, the interesting attractive component of family medicine is that balance, diversity. I think people are less interested these days in wanting to know everything about one thing. I think people want to have good work-life balance. They want to just generally take care of people. And I think that's been the more attractive thing. And I imagine early on in the profession that was the same.
Yeah.
There were folks that were really...
It's one of the myths of family medicine that it's going to be, a life of working yourself to death. It doesn't have to be that at all. I was in solo practice 10 years, and, I was always home for dinner. I told my patients, if you're sick early in the day, give me a call, we'll get you in today, but don't make that call at 4:45.
Yeah.
Make that call at 4:45, you better be
Really sick.
Yeah.
I hear your kind of the thoughts on what you're saying about kind of the dreams and the hopes, and specifically for the profession. Now, when you looked at the health system, I heard you briefly say you saw this as a counter movement to allow access for every patient to have a doctor. Were there other things that you saw that family medicine you'd hoped would have an impact on as this movement was going? Other things that perhaps for the system as a whole and not just for the physicians in general? Maybe that's a hard question.
That's a hard question. Can you be more specific?
I guess I think when you say a snapshot of healthcare in 1969 and the profession's born, outside of what does this new specialist do when he sits down and talks to a patient one-on-one, how is family medicine viewed as potentially impacting the whole profession of medicine?
How we were viewed by others.
Yeah, and internally too.
Is they didn't take us very seriously, and they didn't want to pay us very well, and there weren't quite as many of us. Internally, I think we were very hopeful. We were pursuing a dream of healthcare based on continuing comprehensive, longitudinal care. And during this time, the number of residencies just grew and grew for the first 15 years. And suddenly there were more and more of us. And as we had more of a critical mass, we could relate to each other. Our annual meetings got better. We developed a society of teachers. We developed a North American Primary Care Research Group. We came to exist. And we developed more confidence in ourselves as specialists, and we came to realize that we were controlling the flow of patients. Then, the direction patients went. Then managed care came in, and we became really important players in the healthcare system because we were the gateway to care. They had to go through us. That has kind of gone away to some degree now, but I think that really put family medicine in the forefront of things for a while.
And along the way, you'd said that decade in the 70s, as you're starting to organize and create these distinct groups, do you think that was one of the achievements of the profession, that they may have done better or worse than other specialties, which was to kind of coalesce around each other? Or were the other specialties doing it equally well, do you think?
All right, let's take teaching, because that's what I did, Anita did. Family medicine may have been the first specialty ever to pay attention to teaching. Others, I think all the other specialties assume, I have an MD degree, I'm a good surgeon, I can take out a gallbladder, I'm a gastroenterologist, I can pass a scope, so I must be a good teacher. Family medicine was the first really to pay attention to how do we teach. And the first journal, the journal Family Medicine that you get and I get, John Saul's edits, it's called Family Medicine now, but before that it was called Family Medicine Teacher.
Sure. Yeah.
That was the first iteration of it. And still, we may be the only specialty that has a journal devoted to teaching. We pay attention to it. We hire educators in our departments, and others didn't used to. I think a few of them do now, but didn't used to. So I think that's,
And behavioral scientists.
Behavioral
Other
scientists.
departments did not.
Yeah.
Now they're starting to think about it.
So I think that was an amazing innovation. I just hold that, family medicine, it's like turning an ocean liner. Family medicine turned the ocean liner of American academic medicine and American medical practice in a positive way. 40 years ago, let's involve the family in this. Well, nobody would think to do this.
No.
The fact that the patient in the context of family can have an influence on the outcome of treatment was just not part of the thinking.
No, well, the family systems and family APGAR and the
So
family
we-
genogram.
And
all
family
of
medicine
that came out of family medicine.
introduced all these things.
Yeah. Well, we had
Family
medical,
systems thinking,
medical anthropologists. We had all these people that no other medical specialty even thought of having on our faculties. It was an amazing change. Santa Rosa was the residency, I think, of it, had people, John Ransom, there were names there in history that really are important in thinking about the changes that we influenced in family medicine. The students today, I think also paying attention to students. Nobody had student interest groups. We were the only ones.
We were the first
All of
one.
a sudden, there's student interest groups for every specialty. We were the ones who did
And the ones that did it copied us.
Yeah, they've been copying us with everything.
We have innovated so many things,
Yeah.
and the other specialties just copied it.
Yeah.
Do you think part of that was there was a young movement, and then that just perpetuated itself? That it was youth the youth started it, and so they felt connected to their roots, and that just continued to feed back.
And the other thing is, we just had the good ideas because we needed to.
I have to. So I'll tell you, I was on the National Governing Council for the AMA for students, national residency for AMA, and I've done a lot of national work with the AAFP, and it's night and day.
It is.
It's not even.
Your colleagues in AFP.
You can't even.
And the other specialties, you're hierarchical.
Not even close.
We were probably the first
Yeah.
medical specialty to have a student on their board of directors.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I heard Doug Henley tells me a really great story. You may have even been there for this, but he said the first year that they voted to have students in the House of Delegates for the AAFP, that when they passed the resolution, they immediately put a table at the front of the House, and he said that the chair at that time said, the Speaker of the House said, students come down, you guys have 2 seats up here, this is where you belong. And I almost tear up on that a little bit, because after spending enough time in the AMA where everything is hierarchical, and I think there's a place there, I think it's, I still see a place as it being a collected house of medicine, but I'm very moved by the collegiality by leaders, every leader in family medicine. So exactly what you're saying is that it still reverberates very strongly.
And other specialties may look at family medicine as ruining medicine because it took the patient relationship out of becoming subservient to the physician and made the patient a partner. And I think that's something that other specialties still don't understand, that the patient has opinions about their care. I think that's the whole issue of the hierarchy in medicine.
The focus on the patient, not on the disease,
Yeah.
not on the organ.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
See, every specialty has a reason for being. Radiology has radiation. Pediatrics has kids. Gastroenterology has scopes. And we have the patient and the family. It took us a while to figure that out. Originally it was intuitive. I think the original start of what we called family practice, now family medicine, was really a quest for survival of general practice. They changed the name. And I think I think we lucked out with a good name and a good concept. I don't think it was ever thought through.
No.
Interesting.
No. And it was also, wasn't it going to be the personal physicians, what John Millis was
Oh,
talking about?
Millis called it the primary physician.
Primary physician.
And I'd have to go back and reread it. There was another one, had another one there.
Yeah.
And then, what was his name? There was
another
one called family physician, that we went with that.
Yeah.
Millis would have had it the primary physician.
And that's what Guyman still is focusing on. John Guyman is the fact that we really should be a one specialty, that there should not be general internal medicine and general pediatrics. It should be a primary physician, all really basically being a family
Well, the
physician.
interesting thing is, we're from Oregon, and Oregon has probably the best department in the country.
I would agree with that.
And John Salt just stepped down. They just appointed Jen DeVoe, who's an IOM, internationally known researcher, and she's a class act, a bit of a rascal as the new chair. But John was talking about, interesting, because I asked Jen, hope you negotiated hard, because she was an internal candidate. And John laughs, and Jen, tell him what you got in negotiating. A commitment to raise $10 million for 5 endowed chairs and an institute for innovation in primary care.
Yeah.
Wow.
Big time.
Wow.
But I was going, where was I going with that?
You were talking
Primary
about
care
primary
and
care, the
primary
community.
But John said, we're talking to the dean about consolidating general internal medicine and general pediatrics under family medicine.
Yes.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Says peds is all in favor. The general peds are all in favor.
Yeah.
The general internists aren't.
And you know
Big
why?
surprise, right?
But you know why? Because they're being totally neglected by the subspecialties.
Yeah, they're all specialties, give them no respect.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if I talk to a medical student who says, I want to be a pediatrician, I say, well, if you want to practice what you're going to spend your life training in residency, you're going to spend 3 years in a hospital being taught by subspecialists, you're not going to learn about general pediatrics. There's nobody there to teach you that. And you're going to think to yourself, why did I spend 3 years learning all about pediatric cardiology and pediatric gastroenterology if I'm not even going to do hospital work?
Yep.
And that's the problem. And
I had an interesting experience early in my career. Excuse me for all reminiscing
No,
stuff.
please do. That's why we're
It
here.
was fascinating. I was in New Paltz, and there were 2 busy, highly respected pediatricians in Kingston, New York. That was my hospital. And I have this child in my office now in front of me with pretty obvious meningitis. He's going to hospital. I'm 18 miles away. I'm a GP. I'm not going to take care of this kid. Too far away, too sick. So I called the top pediatrician in Kingston. He says, no, send him up to Albany Medical Center. I don't take care of 6 kids in the hospital.
And this was like in the 60s.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a real
Wow.
issue. If they didn't
Yeah.
see enough of it, that's the problem.
Yeah.
You got to
I think
see
it-
enough.
Was it general
To
Wow.
be competent.
Yeah.
And the generalists aren't seeing it because it's going to subspecialists.
Yeah.
And internal medicine is becoming mostly geriatrics.
Yeah.
And it really is again referring to subspecialists.
Yeah.
Now, as the profession grew through the 70s, are there any other kind of achievements that you look back on and say, that was really remarkable? I've heard, you've already listed a bunch, but are there other things that you recall saying, that was really a milestone?
Look at your book. Don't you have those milestones?
Oh, wow. Yeah, let's see.
At the end of each book, each time. Don't I look at the 80s book? 'Cause that will tell you.
Maybe I didn't do it in this book.
Well, let me look at the second edition.
Oh, give me the
Second
new
edition.
book.
Oh, the new
The
one,
la-
that's
the
right.
latest one.
The new one will
Yeah.
tell you, yeah, right.
I'll show you what we're looking
Okay.
for.
Would you share with me, you said you'd had a couple of other, were there any other contributors here that are still alive that you would suggest I try to find, track down here?
Dan Ostergaard from AAFP.
Oh yeah, he must have been young at that point, I
He
suspect
was.
then.
Dan always said, my claim to fame is I've been an author in every edition of the book. I got him when he was young. Dell, I'll stop there.
Here's the chronology right
Yeah.
here. Yeah, here it is. And this will give you, it was the Willard Commission, Bob.
Willard.
Millis and Willard.
Yeah.
It's all in here.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, here it is. Here's your chronology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to, here's where we are now, in the
Yeah.
70s.
Can I get you anything to drink?
I'm
Water?
just fine. Thank you
No?
so much.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay, so yeah, this is where we are here in the moving through the 70s. Wanco's formed in 72.
Okay, here's 74, the Students of Congress of Delegates. That was the first edition of this book.
1978.
And then that family medicine teacher became a journal. And I was on the committee that did that. So if you're in the 70s, the AAFP fellowships were started then. They're always kind of for people that couldn't take their boards, but a lot of us did it anyhow. Journal of Family Practice started then. It was just a series of achievements moving things forward.
Okay. And
Residency assistance program began, then the RAP program.
so then as moving from achievements that were great, are there any things that you recall that were achievements that you perhaps early on you'd hoped the specialty would achieve? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm seeing an example here where the published report on the need for a new balance back in 1980 saying, a better balance of in workforce. Are there things that you think the specialty could have achieved that may have missed the mark or was disappointing?
Back then. Some trends now I'm not happy with.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Back then I got the feeling that we were very consistently an elevator going up. We were collecting all these tickets that you need to be, a powerful specialty. We had a journal. We had two major reference books then. We had the residency assistance program. We had fellowships. We had recertification. It was all happening in the 70s. It was very exciting. Things were just moving, and more residencies every year. Things were moving up. By 1979, 10 years after the specialty was formed, we had 364 residency program. That's amazing.
Wow.
And
10 years, yeah.
6,000 residents in training.
Wow.
Do you know what else we innovated? Community teaching. That was the
I like
biggest
that.
thing
Yeah,
in the 80s.
yeah, that's right.
We were told, you can't train students in the community. They'll have inferior teaching. We're the only ones who can teach in the medical school.
So basically, it was hospital, medical school, or nowhere. Like
That's
those
it.
were the bastions until then.
Yeah. They're not qualified to teach. They have no training.
And a few years after that, they were the most popular residencies
here.
among the students.
This is EVMS, you can have that, about how all these departments are so thrilled with their community, all these other specialties, thrilled with their community teachers. Well, that was a huge
started
fight.
it. Wow.
Yeah, family medicine started that.
Well, I don't want to take this if this is your only copy.
No, take it. I have more stuff. I mean, really. If I could clear out my files, if you know anybody interested in medical marriage, I have the most complete file.
Please.
Historically,
Having-
on medical marriage.
Being
I'm
being
talking
1
about-
month into a medical marriage.
All right, I'm talking about a file drawer full of articles that you will not find anywhere.
I mean, honestly,
well,
being
you
that
come back and we'll fill up your.
I'm not joking. I mean,
Seriously.
Taylor and I were she and I were both going back and forth on like, well, what are the things that we need to do from the standpoint of building this together? She's
Yeah.
going through residency.
Do you know there was a dual doctor group that I was on the initial board, David and Esther Nash, who met at an AMA
David
meeting.
It was up at Jefferson.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I met David and Esther back just after they got married, and this is like 30 years ago. And David and Esther met at this AMA meeting. She was in Rochester. One was in Brown, one was at Rochester, and they got married and they moved to Philadelphia, and then they started dual doctor couples. I have a whole file drawer full of it.
Wow.
And
Take that too.
Take that too.
Yeah,
I've sent them
not joking.
everything.
We're downsizing here.
I know.
Like
yeah.
my Word file, most of which
Make
is
a book and then get rid of it.
I have medical marriage files like that. I mean, it's just
paid to move across the country at
Right.
$1 a pound.
yeah.
Randy Gould's actually one of Taylor's closest mentors. He's over here at EVMS as well. You know, but
Yeah, we're not that kind of good.
No, we're not.
We just-
well, you guys are here for the last couple of years. Yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so I would love to have your perspective on this. Then, so you have this shift where you have specialty starts in the late 60s, and you kind of like a bang. You're saying the first decade. 10 years goes by, there's a lot of excitement, to use your words. How did that, was there a roller coaster over that first 2 decades? Was there, or was it really kind of just upwards excitement and a lot of
upwards excitement for the first 2 decades.
Okay,
After that, it kind of plateaued.
okay, so
I
mid-80s?
think we kind of been institutionalized, and at that time, mid-80s, I think the excitement had worn off a little bit. We're getting our 12 or 14% of the graduating class right along, and it sort of plateaued. You added another 100 residencies, some of which we probably really didn't need. Started filling them with some international medical graduates, which I think did not help the quality of family physicians we're turning out.
An image.
An image.
Image.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't
Even
want to
those-
be elitist,
Yeah,
but
but-
you know, I've had internationally trained residents, and they aren't trained like U.S. doctors. They just aren't. They don't come with clinical experience.
But we can have them in cardiology and in surgery, and there doesn't seem to be a problem because it's more technological.
Yeah.
It was the interpersonal that was a problem.
But,
Connections and relationships.
But so anyhow, probably in the 1980s, things sort of plateaued. We were becoming institutionalized,
It's an
which
interesting
is
way to
good
put
and
it.
bad.
Well,
We're getting accepted, and we're getting co-opted.
it's interesting to go from being counterculture to culture, and
We're
then
moving into the culture,
and then you.
which is both good and bad.
Was there another counterculture that you've seen that's come against family medicine at all, or has it kind of been the nice guys in the room and it hasn't been an issue?
No, we continue to be the nice guys. I think what's happened, progressively, has been the warrior chairs have died off or retired.
Yeah.
And they're replaced with business people,
Interesting.
nice negotiators.
Yeah. Or touchy-feely who did not get the respect of the other specialists in the academic
Yeah,
center.
just
So much of this is the images formed are in the academic medical center. And whatever the student sees really imprinted upon their minds as to this is what the specialty is. That's why the East Coast is such a tough time with family medicine, because what they're seeing is a whole different group of subspecialists than in the West Coast.
In
That's a
Oregon,
good point.
the school feels that we're way too powerful.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
They fear us.
yeah.
And they're glad to see the back of John Sauls.
Yes. But they
He's
don't
been
know what
difficult.
they're getting. But
Yeah,
they don't
I'm
know
gonna
what
go
they're
there.
getting.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to
Please,
the restaurant.
take your time.
Okay, yeah.
That's fascinating.
I mean-
So you're saying, and I don't think I've ever thought about this. I've thought about the value and the difference in appreciation of family medicine in the West Coast.
Yeah.
I always thought it was more circumstantial and geographic, just due to more rural areas, so there's a
No,
greater
there's a
need.
lot of rural areas in New York. There's a lot of rural
It's
areas
the
in
West Coast
Pennsylvania.
mentality.
But it's the West
It's a
Coast mentality where the
mentality.
specialists are more
More open to accepting
interesting.
help and help and accepting. It's not as med peds doesn't really exist in the West. We always said over our dead bodies would there be med peds in Oregon, and I would tell students, who are you? Who are you? You're not an internist. They're not going to accept you. You're not a pediatrician. Right now it sounds great. I can do it all. What practice are you going to join? You can't cover the other people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's put together to defeat family medicine. That was
Interesting.
when it started in the 70s. I have a whole file on med peds
Wow.
too. And a lot of it happened because it was an East Coast reaction to family medicine. We don't want these people taking on primary care. We're going to do it. And they started so long ago, and still they haven't grown. And the reason
Yeah.
is because there's no good identity.
Place, yeah.
Like, there's no place for them. They're not a specialty.
And the majority don't keep both
They
boards.
Go,
They go one way or the other.
That's it. But you don't hear that.
No.
I mean, they won't say that. They'll kind of encourage them to try to do both. Well, they don't. And the same with family medicine, psychiatry. We've seen this where we've had a psychiatrist join the family medicine department and feel like he had taken a dual residency, but ends up feeling much more comfortable with psychiatry than with family medicine because he's not going to do
Yep.
the kinds of things that family doctors do. He's a psychiatrist.
So, and then, in a way, kind of training that was limited.
Yeah.
You lost the opportunity to really
Yeah.
connect in meaningful ways.
Yeah, I mean, either become a psychiatrist and do what you really should be doing, but don't try to be a behavioral scientist or a family doctor. You can't be. I'm sure I also have my classic articles in family medicine, which you probably should have. I mean, there are some real classic articles. Now, this was the interview by Bill Ventris of Lynn Carmichael. This you probably have. That's the interview of Lynn Carmichael. And
I'm gonna write this. I've come across this, and of course,
yeah, and
Larry.
and Bill was in Portland. He's not anymore, but he was. Now he's down doing the international work. But he was one of our preceptors. In fact, Bill was really, I think, one of the people who nominated me for the STFM award. I know he was, and so there are people that it's really interesting. All right, and of course the myths and realities. I mean, that's the classic one. You know that one about what students. And it's not the students; it's their faculty who never had a true family
Want a glass of
medicine
water?
experience.
I'm fine. You should have one, though. Don't.
Yeah, and if the faculty have been trained in Hopkins or at Yale, and they've never seen family medicine versus the faculty in Oregon, young faculty, who have come through a family medicine clerkship and gone out to a rural area for a month to live there and to see that there are family physicians who are AOA, he's AOA. I mean, I have this big thing in Oregon about, do you know how many family medicine faculty are AOA. Percentage-wise, there were more AOA family medicine faculty in Oregon than any other department.
Wow.
I mean, it was a smaller department, but percentage-wise, higher numbers. The number of what we had, the Gold-Headed Cane Award, you go through the list. How many students won that award as the ideal physician who were going to family medicine residencies? And students need to see that. But somebody's got to show it to them. And I don't think that happens in East Coast school. It certainly doesn't. I mean, they don't become AOA as easily.
East Coast needs some warriors.
Yeah, they don't have them. They
Good way to
don't.
put it.
Now, Rich was the one in Maryland,
Rich.
the one that you have mentored. He's, you know who I mean.
Richard Bruno?
No. The faculty member at the
Oh,
University of Maryland.
Yeah. Hogan.
Colgan.
I don't know.
Okay.
You
He's-
probably wouldn't know him.
Yeah, but
He's kind of second in command at the University of Maryland, and he's written a couple books on, being a physician.
yeah, but he's
Okay.
been the one warrior that they have there
I
in
think
that
so, yeah.
department. Yeah.
I do have to say again, just my own reflections in seeing the young leadership of the American Medical Association and the young leadership of the AAFP. I think the investment that family docs have made in the youth is paying off.
Good.
I think
I'm glad to hear that.
I've watched and I've been at the table for both groups, and the young family physicians are very, very strong.
Good.
So I think you will find some of those warrior chairs coming out
Good.
soon, because
Good.
and so this kind of goes along with the trend, saying, so you go through the 70s and 80s, where the first 2 decades were great. At what point in the late 80s we institutionalized, kind of plateaued a little bit, and where did you feel the profession kind of went at that point between the 80s and 90s and then 2000s? I know these are big overarching questions, but I'm just...
Yeah, I think you started to see the beginnings of some involution. People cut back on OB. And, I didn't do OB in practice for geographic reasons, and maybe it never was realistic for family doctors to do obstetrics, maybe. But it did cut back. But the worst thing, by far, that started to evolve in that time was the hospitalist movement. And family physicians retreating to their offices like the British GPs. And I think this is really detrimental to our specialty, and I think it's only getting worse. There's no continuity in the hospital. You get sick, you go to the hospital. This go to the emergency room is just an awful business, because we've been in the emergency room here a few times, and one experience has been worse than the next. And it just, the lack of continuity, the lack of taking responsibility. Anita was sick a couple of days ago and saw the doctor at 4:30 right away. She had an appointment with a specialist, a pre-planned appointment the next morning, and our concierge doctor had called that specialist and talked to her about Anita. Now, one doctor calling another to discuss a patient, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
You've done it.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to do, but you got to take responsibility for your patient, and people aren't. They were doing shift work, this 80-hour requirement in residency training, which has led to the acceptance of shift work. I just think is a bad thing. Information is lost on handoffs at shift work, and I think it's a bad influence on the specialty.
I think one of the travesties that I'm experiencing in my day-to-day practice is that we still operate on the paradigm of a 15-minute visit. Patients are more sick. They have less money and less access. So when they come to me, I know they say, I've got to fit as much in. I only get this one visit every 3 months. I've got to get it all in. So I have more issues and more complex patients with less time, and then the filling in of the documentation in EMR, that I find that the course of my day, I rarely take a lunch break, and filling in those patients to give them the most time possible. I would agree with you. as you were saying about communicating with other specialties, I think it's probably a travesty that I don't have the time and space in my day. You know, and maybe that's an administrative thing that, you know, we want you to have 10 minutes an hour to coordinate care, to speak with other specialties, and to make sure that you're handling any urgent issues.
Why don't you get to handle your own time?
What do you mean? Why don't you?
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree anymore.
Do you agree?
I have no ability to do that whatsoever, right?
Why?
None.
Why?
Not right. Not in the current systemic model. I don't,
It's in-
because I have no power of. I don't even have the ability to schedule a visit. My visits are pre-scheduled. I can't administratively schedule a visit.
1976, the year we lost our independence.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah.
You know, a patient says, "When can I see you?" And I have to say, "I have no idea."
That's terrible.
Right?
That's just terrible.
It is. I mean, it's from a standpoint, not even an
Direct
autonomy.
primary care. You and a couple of others. You
Yeah.
open your office. You charge by the month. You take no insurance except in the hospital, and you take some poor people just to do your fair share for society.
Yeah.
And you'll be so much happier.
Yeah.
There was a guy in Oregon, his name was Bass Wagner. And he was a family doc, a little younger than me. And he had a practice, an appendage to his home, and his wife was his receptionist, and that was it. And Bass would see about 8 or 10 patients a day. And they would pay him cash, no insurance, cash or check. And we would send students out there. And they would come home and say, wow, this is the way medicine ought to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now he did fill in the insurance forms just the way you used to. He didn't, he didn't take Medicare because that's a real issue.
And
That's the issue.
Once you start taking Medicare, they got you.
They got you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you're not supposed to give free care. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
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 If you're taking Medicare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're part of a group that does that, you have
You
to
take
do it.
Medicare, if I come
Right.
as a patient, you can't say, Bob, I'm going to give you professional courtesy. That's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Yeah. All right. This is the innovative. This is the one page from Jim Puffer back in 2012,
Oh, yeah.
outlining what the board did that was innovative.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
Are these your only copies?
Take them.
Yeah, we
They're
have so much of
sitting
this
in my
stuff around.
file. You know, really.
Take paper.
They're
Take
paper.
more.
I can't
Thank
believe
you.
this stuff that I have, and
I
I don't.
believe you so
I haven't
much.
looked at it in years, you know. But they're all classic articles.
What I'm going
Wow.
to do, I'm going to email you.
Okay.
I've got the first chapter of the new edition.
Okay. I'd appreciate that.
That one, that chapter.
Now and future.
Yeah.
And you wrote this up as an introduction.
I
to
just
us.
I just updated it for the new edition, and I'm going to send it to you. Got that on online.
Well, I have one or two more questions for you, if that's okay. And then,
You are going to have to get home sometime.
well, and I don't want to
Come
keep
back.
you.
No,
I'm
we're
getting
here.
I'm getting
We're
my
here.
military dependency card this afternoon.
Oh.
So I'll be heading back. I should probably get back to Taylor in a couple minutes, but I do have just a couple more, if that's okay. And I guess that would be the big one. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, and you had spoken on some of the things that you see are probably poor trends for the profession. Are there any other things that you recognize that you'd say, what are areas that we need to like redirect or perhaps refocus moving forward? If we could redirect the path today.
Again, you know, I think my life's been in medical education. I'm finding in medical education, we're talking so much now about psychosocial issues. And we're losing a lot of the red meat of medical education. We still have to teach family doctors how to take care of sick people. And I'm not sure, you know,
Interesting.
in where I've been recently, I think the psychosocial processing has taken over medical teaching. And I don't know if we're leaving that to other specialties. If we are, that's wrong. We should be doing it ourselves. So I think that's an issue. I think we talked about shift work and talked about retreating into your office and only doing office practice. We have people looking for jobs with no night work, and what's that about? Because people get sick at night.
This is the big one. This is the article I want you to have. This is a person who is writing, and I don't know her. She's from Fort Collins, talking about loss of hospital, and that to me was a huge loss of practicing in the hospital.
Yeah.
It's 2008.
big.
You know, we're talking about some old articles that have been saying these things over and over again.
The pervasive intrusiveness in electronic medical records. First of all, you know, they'll make this long note and then repeat it day after day. They'll repeat the same error day after day.
Yep.
And the fact that people are over here and talking to you over their shoulder, I mean, this is just...
Or could you were talking about teaching people how to trainees how to take care of sick patients. In my 3 years of residency, I had 16 different medical records.
No.
That means because I'd
relearn 16 different systems?
16 different systems.
Oh, that's
and that means
bizarre.
you show up on the first day, and in order to use it, because you have to be credentialed to use it, the first day of the rotation is go to computer training for the day.
So each rotation had a different system. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Your hospital didn't have just one?
Well, you know, you go to this clinic for a month, and you go to this hospital for a month, and then you'd go here. And you know, the idea is diversity. So then you're at the VA, and then you're at the and so I've counted 16 different EMRs in 3 years. Can you imagine the number of days that I spent, the number of hours I spent scratching my head trying to figure out how to put an order in instead of going, sitting and talking to a patient? I mean, that was a frustrating reality.
You know, I shouldn't reminisce like an old guy.
Hey,
My medical records, I would have one sheet of paper, used heavy cardboard, front back. Hypertension, blood pressure 130/78, hypertension, return to 3 months. That was my note.
Yep. So I'm letting you reminisce because I had 16 different EMRs. Every Wednesday night that I wasn't in the hospital in Durham, I volunteered at a substance abuse clinic in downtown. And it was the kind of clinic where, you know, we got all the vitals, we had a small pharmacy there. I'd welcome the patient at the front door, carry him through the entire visit, draw blood, give him medicines, and send him out. I mean, it was, you know, that was the one, you know, that's the heart of being a caregiver, providing care for someone. And it was a paper system, and that was my favorite documentation system of residency, by far. Wasn't not even close.
We got a whole generation of young doctors who have never seen a paper record.
Yeah.
They've been totally co-opted and indoctrinated.
Yeah. And it's only getting worse.
Yeah. I noticed my dentists use paper records.
Yeah.
They have a lot of things up there. They still have paper records. A lot of
believe
pictures on screens.
You know, this is from 75, but this gives you historical articles that you could look up.
Oh, wow.
And some of them really
From
do
1975?
tell. Yeah. look
This
at the articles.
is excellent.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of bibliography that I don't know if I would have access to otherwise.
Yeah, take a look at
Oh,
that.
this is wonderful.
Now, I think, you know, I'm getting a 75 date on some of it, but some of those may be later, but still, some of those early articles about family medicine are really
This is wonderful.
not easily found. I have just got files and files and files of stuff that I've collected, and I'm happy to share any of these things, because as I said, I'm not using them for my book. You know, there are people that are long gone.
What are you going to do with what we're doing today?
So our idea is to try to have these kind of conversations with as many folks who lived this real time and had that predominant perspective about the dream at the birth, and collect conversations, but particularly ask, when we've come up with 4 or 5 questions, we say, let's ask everybody the same sort of question. Those are the ones I forwarded to you. The idea being, we would like to put together a piece that at least we would probably publish somewhere along lines of STFM, but haven't really necessarily said that, you know, we're going to direct it in that location or not. Larry Bauer, who I think you said you've met before, had some conversations with Ian McWhinney up in Canada before he passed. And he said, you know, I just realized the value of having that conversation. And then the next time I met him, his cognition was starting to deteriorate. And he said, you know, this is a generation of voices that I want to make sure that we capture, and that my generation has that, and won't lose track. You know, amongst all the other things that we've talked, oh, there he is. Amongst all the other things that we've talked about, that we don't lose that voice and get caught up in the EMR and all the other, you know, kind of travesties that I think modern medicine tends to run in. So that's the direction. Is the immediate direction would be potentially to put together a piece for publication, and of course we would share any of our thoughts before we would put anything out there.
But you're going to have too much for one article.
We will, and so, but it also was just to kind of really get these conversations down and on.
How many have you done?
I think we're at 6 so far. So
You're finding consistency?
I think actually I've been surprised in the different levels of, and maybe this is just a variation in excitement versus uncertainty. Maybe that's a spectrum of a similar emotion. I think a lot of the conversations so far have been some level of that is either we were so excited and had a great positive trajectory, and then versus we had no idea what was going to happen.
Well, those are not mutually exclusive, are they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think the conversation's been very similar. This has been very enlightening to me. I would say the stories that you've shared and the insights you've had are things that I haven't talked to anybody else about. I really appreciate that.
Very interesting. It was in 1969. I was already committed. I was a GP. When I went into practice in this small town, the senior doc advised me strongly to go back and take a residency in something else, but I didn't.
Wow.
I was committed. So I was on this path, but at the same time, young graduates at that time, they weren't committed. So they had to feel a lot more uncertainty than me.
That's an interesting
You
point.
grew up in a town
Yeah.
where that was your role model, was the GPs, yeah. The same as what
Well,
Aaron's
so
talking
the
about.
courageous people were the ones who made the decision to go with family medicine
Interesting.
in 1969 and 70 and 71.
Yeah,
I was already on the path.
yeah. And you know, part of the problem in the 90s was the number of students who went into family medicine because they felt that the other specialties were not going to afford them the status because of managed care. Family medicine became a little bit too self-confident, and it was the retraining of specialists. You know, that was a big thing, that we were going to retrain all these specialists.
You're later now. You're in the
90s.
90s. Yeah.
90s, that's what I'm saying, in the
We have
90s.
people coming back to us
Yeah.
wanting to retrain as family
Retrain
doctors.
as family docs.
Wow.
And so it became very easy for people who probably should not have been family doctors. They probably, by personality, should have been something else. And they became family doctors because we had so many residency spots open. It was the easiest thing to get into. And they probably are very discouraged today because they're not in the right specialty for them. And so these are the ones who I suspect have become the administrators, and they're willing to, you know, I hear more people, family doctors, saying things like, I can't wait to retire. Well, that's really sad, you know, but it's that age group that did it in the 90s.
I feel bad saying I wanted to retire here now.
Well, that's all
I'm
right.
I'm
That's
just joking.
different. That's
I'm just joking, of course.
Yeah.
But no, I know.
You do well in academic medicine.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
you're thinking about writing,
Yeah.
you're
yeah,
outgoing, you're good with people, you're
Right.
interested in this stuff.
yeah, yeah.
You've had a few years of private practice under your
Oh,
belt.
my gosh.
You ought to think about academic medicine.
I appreciate
Someplace that
that.
has a good mentor.
appreciate that.
You're the one who needs to see this and
Let's
keep
see.
it. I haven't read this in absolute years. This is 1969. Ann Millis was AMA. I found it in there, and
Oh, let's see.
that is 1969.
Oh wow.
This is a wow. That is something that
Are you sure? I mean, I feel
take
bad.
it. I'm not going to use these. You're going to use them.
1969.
The point is,
Wow.
I'm passing these on to you
Oh, wow,
because
this is great.
I'm not. It is. This is great
This is
stuff.
really amazing.
You know, here's another one by Lynn Carmichael 20 years later. Oh my gosh. And what year was this?
Poor Lynn
20 years
Carmichael,
later.
he developed dementia
86.
too.
86. You got to have that by Lynn Carmichael. 20 years later.
Wow.
I mean, that's written, go in the back of it. It was from the family, Medicine Journal.
Oh yeah. Wow.
And here it says, in 1946, it was pretty well taken for granted that the general practitioner was a dying species. He is not dead, his practice is not buried, and this writer is saying, and this is written in 58, this article. I've got to pass these on. I mean, it does no good sitting in my files here. I haven't looked at these for years. And general practitioners are said to have to resort to volume flow of patients and speed up in order to keep up financially. This is silly. Many do, but if they knew how to obtain an adequate return from general practice, the volume practice would disappear. Oh, this is funny.
And what year was that?
58.
1958.
58.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. See, it was written by somebody in the Northwest. Hospitals are said to discriminate against the general practitioner, and privileges are said to be arbitrarily withheld. This is not a serious problem in the Northwest, but elsewhere it may be present to a certain degree. No. This is interesting. General practitioners are said to be a relic of the past, since the public is supposed to demand specially trained men for all of its needs. The individuals who spread this gospel are blind and insensitive to the real needs and desires of the public. This is amazing. Family practice is said not to attract good and qualified men. Of course, there were no women at that time. It never will until there's a change of attitude among general practitioners. They must adopt a positive attitude, stop thinking that their domain is being whittled down because a few surgical privileges are being refused. The medical schools will have to change. This is the warrior writing. You're going to get this one too. Therefore, the consulting specialists reign and influence the students.
Wow. In 1958.
58, yep. Some groups have proposed that the internist will be the family physician of the future. This is a good proposal, but very short-sighted. After 3 years of training in heart disease or the like, an internist is no more qualified to do a good pelvic exam than before he started his residency. Unqualified to care for the mild bursitis, only minor exposure to skin disorders, knows little about bone and joint disease.
How this person's using examples.
Yeah.
He has excellent training in medical specialties, and his best attribute is his method and approach to a medical or diagnostic problem. So this is absolutely amazing. This is before family medicine. This is 1958.
This is great.
You got to have this.
Who's the author?
Bob Michael from Eugene, Oregon. That is amazing. Here we go. This was when he met you with a reception. It's a reprint I wrote 30 years ago.
Oh my God.
Originally printed in the Western Journal Surgery, Obstetrics and Gynecology, which is now gone out of production.
Send me his reprint.
I'm really quite embarrassed that I said some of these things, but I was quite youthful at the time, and also 30 years of age and quite self-important. Oh my gosh. Oh.
Do you remember him? I don't know.
Yeah, I do, very well, yeah.
I don't want to take your own copy.
Hey, what am I going to do with it? I have to pass this on to you.
Wow.
Do with it what you feel.
Wow.
But, to me, so much of this started with the breakup of family medicine into subspecialties. And geriatrics was the first. And we had to do geriatrics because internal medicine was taking the nursing home and making it their domain. And this was a real problem because they had geriatrics as their fellowship. And Hillman Castle, who was not a family physician, started this business of fellowships. And he was at Utah. Like that one, it broke apart. That's enough.
No,
But it broke apart family
Oh,
medicine
Dr.
was the
Nina.
beginning, and there were a lot of people who said, don't do this, don't be specialist.
One more trend I'm not happy with
Yeah,
is the
please.
alliance of nurse practitioners and PAs.
Yeah.
This breaks up continuity. It's just not the same. Next 2 visits, come and see my nurse practitioner. That's not right. And
I can tell you our practice has 3. I've been invited to do exactly that, and I've done it 0 times.
Well,
That I'll see my patients.
yeah, I have one of my subspecialists is being fired for that reason. We'll find somebody else.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's not just family medicine
No.
that's doing it, the others are doing it, but family medicine was the first. Because when it started, really with making money for the family physician, I'm sorry to say. They felt this was a cheap
Yep.
way to give care and just supervise, and I think it started mostly with PAs and then
Yep.
spread to nurse
No, when I was up in New
practitioners.
York, somebody said, why don't you get a PA to help in your practices? Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to double my night calls.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, really bad.
Are,
So,
are there any questions that I missed or I should have asked?
That's a very good question. It's one of my favorite questions. But my answer is no. I think
Oh,
you covered
great.
it very well.
I'm gonna put a big no
I
there.
always ask that on interviews,
yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm interviewing people for a job.
give this to him.
I appreciate that.
please. I'm
Give me
sorry.
one more.
One more, that's a.
You give me plenty of homework, but the good news is I
sure
like
have,
homework.
yeah. I mean, in your spare time reading that stuff, but you're gonna find stuff in there that you probably won't find anywhere else, and
2002.
I'm pretty sure, and,
Let me turn off the tape recorder so that I can be